AITA for blowing up at my sister after years of unacknowledged sacrifices and her exploiting my talents for her multi-million-dollar business? I, a 32-year-old woman, am reeling from a family blow-up that has shattered my world, and I honestly don't know if I'm the villain in this story. My older sister, Emily, 35, and I have always been intertwined. Growing up, she was my idol, my protector, and my best friend. We shared a bedroom until I was 16, whispered secrets late into the night, and had an unspoken pact to always have each other's backs. Our parents, bless their hearts, were loving but perhaps a little too hands-off, which meant Emily, as the elder, often stepped into a quasi-parental role for me. This dynamic, while initially comforting, laid the groundwork for a pattern that would eventually become suffocating. Emily was always the brighter star in our family constellation, excelling in school, effortlessly charming, and seemingly destined for greatness. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, artistic one, content to observe and support from the sidelines. This wasn't a problem when we were kids. I genuinely admired her. But as we entered adulthood, the lines blurred. The first major instance of this dynamic shifting from supportive to parasitic was about 8 years ago. I had just graduated college with a degree in graphic design, brimming with ambition to launch my own freelance career. I had even secured a promising internship with a well-known agency. Around the same time, Emily, who had dabbled in various ventures, decided to launch an online boutique selling handcrafted jewelry. She was passionate but lacked the design and marketing savvy. She came to me, teary-eyed, explaining how this was her one shot, and how she desperately needed my help to get her brand off the ground. She promised me a significant stake in the business once it became profitable, emphasizing that we'd be building this together as sisters. Naively, I believed her. I deferred my internship, poured all my creative energy into designing her logo, website, marketing materials, and even managed her social media for the first 2 years. I worked tirelessly, often pulling all-nighters, while juggling a part-time job to pay my own bills. My own portfolio stagnated, my freelance dreams deferred. Emily, meanwhile, was the face of the brand, attending craft fairs and networking events, always introducing herself as the sole visionary. When people complimented the branding, she'd smile graciously and say, "Oh, I just have a knack for aesthetics," never once mentioning my name. The emotional tone of our relationship slowly began to shift from mutual support to a transactional one, where my efforts were expected, and her gratitude was minimal, if present at all. I started to feel like a ghost in my own sister's success story, a silent, invisible partner whose contributions were not just unacknowledged but actively erased. The unspoken rule became, Emily's success was our family's success, and my role was to facilitate it, no matter the personal cost. The slow, insidious build-up to the current crisis began about 3 years ago when Emily's jewelry business, largely thanks to the robust brand identity and marketing strategy one had meticulously crafted, finally hit the big time. She secured a major retail partnership, her sales skyrocketed, and she started appearing in local business magazines. Suddenly, the struggling artist persona she'd adopted for years was replaced by a polished, successful entrepreneur. While I was genuinely happy for her on one level, after all, I had invested so much of myself into it, the emotional distance between us grew into a chasm. Emily, now flush with cash, moved into a sprawling, renovated house in a trendy part of town, bought a luxury car, and started taking extravagant vacations. My life, by contrast, remained largely the same. I was still struggling to rebuild my own freelance career, often taking on low-paying gigs just to make ends meet, and living in the same modest apartment. The promised, significant stake in her business had never materialized, nor had any formal acknowledgement of my foundational contributions. When I gently broached the topic once, she waved it off, saying, "Oh, darling, you know how tight things were back then. And besides, it was a team effort, wasn't it? We're family." The "we're family" line had become her go-to excuse for exploiting my labor without fair compensation, or even recognition. The subtle betrayals became more frequent and harder to ignore. At a family Christmas dinner last year, My aunt, completely unaware of my involvement, gushed to Emily. "Your website is just stunning, Emily. You really have an eye for design." Emily, instead of correcting her, simply beamed and said, "Thank you, Auntie." I poured my heart into it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't just about the credit, it was about the deliberate omission, the active erasure of my existence in her narrative of success. Then came the early warning signs that something was fundamentally broken. I tried to talk to her about my own career frustrations, about feeling stuck, about needing a break. She'd listen for a few minutes, then pivot the conversation back to her latest business deal or her upcoming trip to Bali. Her advice was always superficial. "Just work harder, Sarah." Or, "You need to network more." It felt like she genuinely couldn't comprehend that my struggles were directly linked to the years I'd spent propping up her dreams. My parents, unfortunately, only exacerbated the issue. They saw Emily's success as a triumph for the entire family and subtly encouraged me to be more like Emily. When I tried to explain my feelings of being used, they'd dismiss it as sibling rivalry or suggest I was jealous. "Emily's always been the ambitious one," my mom would say, "and you're just not." This constant invalidation from both Emily and my parents fueled a quiet rage within me, a simmering resentment that I desperately tried to suppress for the sake of family harmony. The final straw, the one that broke the camel's back and led to the inevitable explosion, was her wedding announcement. The breaking point arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. Emily announced her engagement to Mark, a successful architect she'd met through her business connections. The news itself wasn't the issue. I was happy she found someone. The problem was the sheer, unbridled extravagance of her wedding plans, coupled with her complete disregard for my financial situation and emotional well-being. She expected me to be her maid of honor, which, traditionally, I would have been thrilled about. However, her vision for the role involved a destination bachelorette party in Santorini, a designer bridesmaid dress that cost more than my monthly rent, and a series of pre-wedding events that would require significant travel and financial outlay. She laid all this out over brunch, rattling off expenses and expectations as if she were reading from a shopping list, never once pausing to ask if any of this was feasible for me. When I tentatively mentioned my budget constraints, she scoffed. "Oh, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It's my wedding. You can just put it on a credit card. It's only money, and it's for me." That dismissive tone, the casual expectation that I would incur debt for her lavish desires, ignited a spark. But the real explosion happened a week later, during a wedding planning session at our parents' house. Emily was showing off swatches of silk and discussing floral arrangements that cost more than my car. My mom was cooing over everything, and my dad was nodding along, seemingly oblivious to the tension radiating from me. Emily turned to me, a saccharine smile on her face. "And for the maid of honor speech, Sarah, I want something really heartfelt. Something that captures our journey, how we built my empire together." The word "my" hung in the air, a cruel, mocking echo of all the years I'd spent in her shadow. I felt a tremor run through me, a sudden, uncontrollable surge of all the suppressed anger, resentment, and hurt. "Your empire, Emily?" I heard my voice, surprisingly steady, though my hands were shaking. "Is that what you call it? Because last I checked, I was the one who designed every single aspect of that empire for 2 years for free, while you took all the credit." The room went silent. My parents froze, their eyes wide with shock. Emily's face contorted, her saccharine smile replaced by a venomous sneer. "Excuse me?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "Are you really doing this now? Trying to undermine me on my wedding day?" "Undermine you?" I retorted, my voice rising. "You've been undermining me for years. You took my work, my time, my dreams, and you built your success on my back, then acted like I was just some jealous little sister. You promised me a stake, Emily. You promised we'd do it together." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. "And now you expect me to bankrupt myself for your extravagant wedding, while you flaunt your wealth, knowing full well I'm still struggling because I put my life on hold for your empire? Emily stood up, her face flushed. You're pathetic, Sarah. Always the victim. You never had the drive, the vision. You think you're owed something? I worked hard for everything I have. You're just bitter because you couldn't make it on your own. My dad finally intervened, his voice stern. Sarah, that's enough. Apologize to your sister. But I was beyond caring. No! I yelled, tears streaming down my face. I'm done apologizing for your convenience. I'm done being invisible. I'm done being your free labor. I grabbed my bag, my heart pounding, and stormed out of the house, leaving a stunned silence in my wake. The confrontation was brutal, raw, and utterly devastating. Both of us had understandable motivations, twisted by years of unspoken resentments and perceived slights. Emily, perhaps genuinely believing her success was solely her own, and me, finally breaking under the weight of years of unacknowledged sacrifice. The immediate aftermath of the argument was a deafening silence, followed by a torrent of emotional chaos. I drove home in a blur, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. My chest ached, a physical manifestation of the years of suppressed anger and grief finally erupting. When I got back to my apartment, I collapsed onto my couch, shaking uncontrollably. The tears came then, not the angry tears of the confrontation, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that felt like they were tearing my soul apart. It was a strange mix of profound sadness, betrayal, and a terrifying, exhilarating sense of liberation. The idealized image of my sister, the one I had clung to for so long despite all the evidence, had been shattered into a million pieces. The sisterhood I thought we had, the unbreakable bond, felt like a cruel illusion. The betrayal stung the most, not just the financial exploitation, but the emotional manipulation, the way she had so casually dismissed my sacrifices and then twisted the narrative to make me out to be the jealous one. The conflict consumed me. For days, I barely ate or slept. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every quiet moment was filled with replays of the argument, dissecting every word, every accusation. Did I say too much? Was I too harsh? Could I have handled it differently? The guilt gnawed at me, whispering that I had ruined our family, that I was the one who had shattered the peace. But beneath the guilt, a tiny flicker of relief began to grow. I had finally spoken my truth. I had finally stood up for myself, even if it meant burning bridges. My daily life became a struggle. My freelance work suffered. I couldn't focus on design projects, my creativity stifled by the emotional turmoil. I started avoiding calls from my parents, knowing they would inevitably try to mediate or, worse, subtly chastise me for upsetting Emily. The rift with my parents was almost as painful as the one with Emily. They continued to side with her, framing me as the instigator, the one who caused trouble. Emily's under a lot of stress with the wedding, my mom would say. And you just added to it. Their inability to see my perspective, to acknowledge my pain, felt like a second betrayal. My closest friends were my only lifeline. I poured out the entire story to them, raw and unfiltered. They listened, offered comfort, and crucially, validated my feelings. You were completely justified, Sarah, one friend said. She took advantage of you for years. Their support was a balm, but it couldn't fully heal the gaping wound in my heart. The conflict affected my mental health profoundly. I found myself battling anxiety attacks, my heart racing, my breath shallow. I felt a pervasive sense of isolation, as if I was adrift in a sea of family expectations and unacknowledged pain. The constant rumination made it hard to escape the cycle of anger and sadness. I knew I needed to process this, to find a way to move forward, but the path felt incredibly murky. The weight of the broken relationship, the disappointment in my family, and the uncertainty of what comes next felt almost unbearable. I missed the sister I thought I had, even as I resented the one she had become. It's been a few weeks since the blow-up, and the silence from Emily has been deafening. My parents have sent a few texts, mostly vague attempts at reconciliation that still implicitly blame me for the drama. I haven't responded. I've spent countless hours replaying the entire scenario in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Was I too harsh? Did I choose the wrong moment? Was my anger justified, or was it fueled by years of unspoken jealousy and resentment that I hadn't properly addressed? I've always prided myself on being the calm, rational one, the peacemaker in our family, and this explosion feels so out of character for me. But then again, maybe that's the problem. I've been the calm one for too long, suppressing my own needs and feelings for the sake of others. I question my actions constantly. Should I have approached Emily privately, perhaps in a calmer setting? But every time I tried to bring up my feelings before, she brushed me off. Was this the only way to make her truly hear me? Or did I just burn the bridge beyond repair? Part of me feels a strange sense of relief, like a heavy burden has been lifted. The constant pressure to be Emily's silent support, to celebrate her successes while my own dreams withered, was exhausting. But another part of me grieves deeply for the sisterhood I thought I had, for the shared history and the future we were supposed to build. It's hard to reconcile the Emily who was my childhood confidant with the Emily who so casually exploited me and then gaslit me when I finally spoke up. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you because I'm lost. AITA for finally snapping and telling my sister exactly how I felt, even if it meant destroying our relationship and causing a huge family rift. Was I wrong to expect more from her after all my sacrifices? Or was I justified in finally standing up for myself, even if it meant being labeled the bad guy by my own family? I genuinely need outside perspectives on this, because my own mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and doubts.